All right. Hi, everyone. This is Megan Davis from Disarm, and I'm here with Charlee Remitz, who is on the opposite coast but headed to New York soon, which I'm very excited about.
Yes.
And I'm we're chatting today just about Charlie's brand, some of the music that she's working on. And yeah, so with that, tell me a little bit about your personal brand and the message that you are spreading out.
So I feel like my brand in the past was a lot more refined, and I think I was like trying to maybe fall into line with other artists, and that like I wanted to do photo shoots that looked like Taylor Swift or Selena Gomez, or like people who are doing, who have done stuff that is it works, like it works. But I think recently I became really almost like curious about sort of like the past. Like I think I've always been like really, I don't know, like a little old school as compared to other people. Like even my mindset, I feel like even when I was younger, I was always really interested in like older music, and none of my friends thought that was very cool. And I was like, well, I think it's cool. And they were like, no, I don't want to listen to Billy Joel. I want to listen to Tupac. And I'm like, okay, well, that's your thing. So I feel like with my brand right now, I've been trying to kind of, it's been very 80s oriented. And the thing that I think is cool about the 80s is I've talked to my mom a lot about it. And in the 80s, there was a very like hush hush policy. Nobody really talked about anything. Nobody talked about heartbreak or divorce. Nobody talked about LGBTQ rights. Nobody talked about anything like that. Everything was very hush hush. I mean, as long as you looked good, prim, proper, you went to church, like you were considered a good person. And so it's almost like I wanted to take the really cool, funky, totally self-expressive decade that the 80s was, and also bring a really like candid branch of honesty to it, because I feel like that's the one thing that they missed. They never had that like huge movement like the Me Too movement or any of these huge moments where everybody finally has like a stage that they're able to stand on and be like, you know what, as well as looking good and as well as looking aesthetically pleasing, this is like my mess that I want you all to be aware of, because in owning it, I'm taking back my narrative and I'm being powerful and strong and I'm standing up for myself and for other people too. And so I really wanted to, I don't know, do something like that. Plus, who doesn't love the 80s? I love the 80s.
I love it, yes. And loving like the 80s style, I'm already like envisioning for my Halloween costume now. So that's an idea I'll like, set on the shelf. And
Yeah.
it's also, you have such a, it's so honest. Like you're taking context from the past and being inspired by it, but also applying it to the present in a way that is like very relevant. And through that, like showing your own voice as well, which I think is so cool. Tell me a little bit more about the songs, the albums, the performances that you have upcoming that you're sharing this message through.
So the songs, I last year I had gotten to a place, I think around August. At that point I'd already put out an album. I put out two EPs. I feel like I'd paid well more than the amount of dues I needed to at that point. And so I was kind of getting, God, I don't know, I was feeling really defeated. And I was like, at this point, it's like either I give up or I just do another album and I just keep going. And honestly, for me, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's a pride thing, but I was like, I'm not giving up. So you're going to have to like throw me off the planet before I give up. So I decided to do an album, and I went into the studio with a new producer. I used to work with a different producer, and he was very dynamic, and his production sounded, very crisp, very put together. And this other producer, his stuff wasn't quite as dynamic. It wasn't as layered, but there was something really kind of pure about his production. And so we went into the studio together and we started writing some music. And I had said from the get-go, like I want to go into the studio and write an album. And I thought that the album was going to kind of fall into line with other albums, whereas it was going to explore like time, family drama, because I've always been wickedly inspired by my like family's, problems. And but then I think around December of last year, I actually ended up falling in love for the first time. I've never been in love before. So this was like a brand new experience. And I think as far as like musically, I think, and even mentally, it opened me up to like a brand new world and a brand new subject matter that I can write about, and I don't know. And I have synesthesia. And so it's kind of when you see like words, numbers, so on and so forth, you hear things and it all, it registers as a color. So for instance, there's certain songs that I've written like BMW and King's Cup. Those songs both register to me as blue. And then there's songs like Filling in for a Goddess and Forever Like This that register to me as pink. And so the same thing happens with people. And this person that came into my life, he was kind of the first person that registered to me as like a pink and a blue. And it was just different for me because I'd never spent a whole lot of time in that kind of energy. So it was really cool getting to write about that. So the album went from a position where I thought it was going to be very much of the same, and it ended up really broadening my horizons. And then I thought it was going to be about love, and then it just really ended up being about heartbreak. But I actually thought, I mean, as terrible and maybe like self-deprecating as this is, I kind of thought heartbreak was like really depressing and awful, but like also kind of the coolest thing I've ever like been a part of, because watching myself sort of climb out of it was, I don't know, very triumphant. I don't know. It was pretty cool. Like, other than crying all the time, but like, it was cool, like feeling that much pain and getting to experience that much inspiration and just feeling all those emotions. It was very impactful for me. So I think the new music really benefited from that immensely.
Very cool. I love that. I'm such a visual person, so the visual descriptions of like seeing people as like blue or pink or registering as different colors resonates so much. And I think that equally being able to like be open to experiencing those deeper emotions like love or heartbreak or the combination, and then also finding your way through those, I think you're able to speak from like a really deeper place in your music, which is so cool.
Yes.
Like they're lacking, you know?
No, totally.
Yeah. What is like in sharing that message and like communicating that and moving people through that, what is your goal? Like what do you want your songs to, what impact do you want your song to have on society?
I would really like for people to realize how like inevitable and necessary and beautiful pain and sadness are. Because I feel like as far as emotions go, we're all very timid and fearful to experience them because, you know, of course they have the ability, like when you experience pain, especially like an immeasurable amount of pain, which is what I kind of felt like I was going through this summer after having this heartbreak. I think when you experience that, there's the propensity to believe that there's no coming back. Like you're going to walk into like this dark place and then just be there for the rest of your life. But I think what happens is what you're supposed to do is you walk into this dark place and you sort of find a new reality. So, you know, it's not like you're coming from the light and you're walking through a tunnel and then you're coming back to the light. It's like you're in the light, you walk through a tunnel, and then you surface out on the other side. And I think people tend to believe that like sadness is like you just kind of retreat into a hole and then you come back out and you're in the exact same place you were before. But that's not how sadness works. It's a building block. And I also kind of believe that sadness is completely fundamental to happiness. So if you want to experience happiness, I think the purest form of happiness comes from knowing exactly who you are. And there's no way, shape, or form that you're going to have a firm grasp on who you are if you haven't experienced that type of like soul crushing, heartbreaking blue. And, you know, on top of that, like I generally talk about my music as being like, it's almost like you take a pop song and you just submerge it into like a pool or a lake or an ocean. And it's just a lot about just like going below the surface, because I think everybody, you know, kind of stays above the surface. They write what is relevant, what is going to make money, what's going to give you an immediate return. And I want to write about things that I feel like are pertinent and that I feel like are relatable. And more so than that, like I feel like especially this year, I've spent such an incredible amount of time feeling very misunderstood and very demonized. And so it's also a part about being able to tell my story. And I guess I just want to say that like I want sadness to be viewed as this triumphant thing. It's something that you feel, and the more you feel and the less you delay, the less you drag out the healing process. And it really does, when you surface on the other side of it, I really truly believe that you are surfacing into a position of extreme, almost like untouchable power.
Absolutely. I think, and the fact that you're able to articulate and share that message is so important, because I think a lot of the times people go on their own hero journeys per se, and they have their own sadness and experiences that they go through and don't necessarily know how to navigate. You know, it's tricky and it's different. And
Yeah.
it's really cool that rather than kind of like tiptoeing and delivering what's pleasant and palatable, you're diving in and like helping people think even. Uh-oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I can't. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah, we're good to go.
I think I covered my mic.
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
I'm like a grandma. I'm like, my phone doesn't work. Hello. I've researched a lot about publishing and stuff, and there's publishers. There's this thing in novels. It's called an inciting incident, and publishers always want the inciting incident to happen within the first 5 pages, because that's kind of what sets you on the hero's journey. And I've like spent such a grand amount of my time trying to figure out what my inciting incident is, because I feel like that would be the easiest way for me to like answer a question when people are like, so when was the moment that you decided you wanted to be a pop star? Because I always look at it and I'm like, I have no idea when that occurred to me. I don't know. Did I just wake up one day and I was like, hello, you're looking at the new Britney Spears, but I'm not going to implode like she did in 2007. Like, you know, and so that's funny. A hero's journey. I'm like on a hero's journey, but I just like don't know when it began. No idea.
I love it. It's step over step. I feel like it's like for me, the feeling, it's like I'm constantly falling and then catching myself and then constantly falling, and it's like an evolution or something.
That is seriously the biggest portion of it though. Like through this heartbreak, it's like I'm mad at him and then I'm not, and then I'm mad at him and then I'm not, and then I'm going back to him and then I'm not. And it's just like you kind of have to go through it and cycle through it and not make yourself feel guilty about it. You know, you go on your own process and you just own it and you do what feels right and just follow your heart. And honestly, like, I mean, I feel like I've watched everybody like has a specific, you know, everybody has their advice for you, and it's really, you get to determine your own journey, which I think is cool. You get to choose whether or not that journey is you drowning or you thriving, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of journeys, and now you're performing and you're traveling, we're just chatting, you're headed out to New York soon.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine you're greeted by a lot of people you've met before, and people who likely have difference in opinion, different perspectives. When you're in those situations and you're meeting new people, what are your keys for having productive conversations?
I think the one thing that I've always talked to people about is changing their relationship with words, because I think we all are scared of words. It's very strange. It's like we fear saying too much, or we fear certain words, or we attach negative connotations to them. I think that's why sadness is something that's perceived as such like it's like a flaming hot cast iron. You like wag it in somebody's face and they're like, whoa. But it's just like, it's funny. For such a long time, I was so scared of expressing myself. And then now I'm like, they're just things. They're things you use, and like more often than not, they set you free. And so I think when I go into meeting other people, I'm like, you can really say whatever you want, you know, it would be good if you had a filter, and it would be good if you didn't just, you know, give them your all and then scare them away. But I mean, I think the cool thing is that I've gotten to a place where I'm like, you know, think about what you're going to say before you say it, and then say it and just own it. And as far as like difference of opinions, I'm very opinionated too. And I generally, when I have an opinion about something too, I do get a little put off when people don't immediately accept my map of reality as their own. I'm like, well, you are misguided. I think honestly, it's tough. I would say like my biggest piece of advice for even for myself when I do travel and I meet other people is just to realize that they're doing what I'm doing, and they're using words and they're opening their world up to me. And so I think in the same regard, I kind of have to open myself up and be like, okay, you don't have to absorb what they're saying. You don't have to be a sponge, but it would be really great if you gave them the space to be heard, because I think that that's a luxury. I think it's an kind of like an immeasurable gift to give to somebody, to just allow them for 5 minutes to be totally and completely heard, you know?
Absolutely. I think that's so funny. I've been asking people about conversation and what their tips are about meeting new people, and that's the first time someone has talked about actually listening and providing space, which is such a huge part of it.
I think it really is, because I needed that when I was younger. I felt like I had nobody to talk to. And so I think going through that, now I'm like, okay, you could provide that for other people.
Absolutely. And along those lines and conversation and connecting with different people, what does disarm your heart mean in your words?
I've actually thought a lot about this, because I think since I've watched Disarm Your Heart from the beginning, I think it's actually changed its tune for me quite a bit, because I've kept up with it. Not in the sense that I'm like a super fan, but like in the sense that like I'm always distinctly aware that Disarm Your Heart is very much existing in my universe. And I think honestly, in the beginning, I thought it was really cool, because like it made me pause for a second and like sort of ponder the title and ponder the name. And I was like, it's so interesting because it's such a cool name, which I was telling you, it's such a cool name. It definitely, it causes some reflection. So I think now it's been a few years since it initially sort of hit me in the face with its impact. I feel like Disarm Your Heart is almost, I think it's the same thing. It's like, for me, I think it's letting go. And I think I've learned a lot this year about the importance of letting go, especially, I think the heart is a very tender organ. It's malleable too. And I think it's really easy to let people in, and to, instead, I think I've gone over this a few times in the past, where there's a difference between being open and gaping. There's a difference between being generous and being almost like disastrous, in the sense that like you want to be open and you want to allow people to peer inside of you, but you also have to be wary. And so I think Disarm Your Heart, like, is, I think it the general message is that you let go and you kind of remove some of your barriers. But I think it's also like having the mental stability and the mental almost awareness to know what's good for you. So you disarm your heart and you allow only the good things to come to you. And you remove the dead weight, and you remove the dead people that don't need to be in your existence. You remove the situations that aren't good for you, and you just let your heart be weightless. That's what it means to me.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see you perform out in New York.
I'm excited for you to come. It's going to be great.
Yes, I look forward to it.